You got the idea last night about that. That's a really hard concept to get through. I think it's hard to articulate, that idea of, you know, giving something enough space and filling it in with your experience so that something that is synergistic can come through.
No.
Like,
There was a couple things that I didn't get that I thought that um I
we
would
need to expand on a
that I
little
would
bit.
mention to you.
Yeah. It's yeah, it's interesting. It's like there's
Is
a
it like the like when in one of the things from the Patanjali sutras that I was reading was like he was talking about like there a lot of it talks about pure awareness or essentially like the silence or the withdrawal of the senses and things like that, but just from a slightly different angle.
yeah, the Taoists would call that the Tao. It's
Mm,
the same concept.
okay.
Not the way, but you know, it
S-
it's the totality or the one.
But to be found in the silence,
Yeah,
like yeah.
exactly.
And so are you, is that what you're saying basically? I mean, is that what you're talking about? I mean,
Yeah, basically, I mean, it's like um probably the best analogy, and I didn't use it last night, I don't think, because I don't know how many people would get it. Like between like when somebody's translating something, like even a word, just a single word, it's like they can they can get as close a representation as they can to the original. So, like let's say they were, translating, um, uh, Mandarin and English, which are pretty far apart. you know, um, if a word, even though it might not really sounds close, but hua means flower. But so if you were to like put your native tongue on the top and then hua on the bottom, and you were trying to take all of the differences, not differences, if you were trying to like um, describe by definition what flower actually means in English, not just its literal meaning, but also, to bloom or to flower. We use it in all these different contexts, right? And so even the word that it's not flower, but words that sound the same, like flower, right? Like FLOUR, you know. So things that sound exactly the same are pronounced exactly the same, but have, a somewhat different meaning, right? And and then the same thing with the Mandarin word hua, which means flower, but all the different connotations of that, right? And so, and you were to try to, link as many that are comparable to each other, if there are any. But then there's the essence of what those things, the essence is where, your experience of those things comes up. Like, pick your favorite flower, look at it, smell it, if they're the same, like, because obviously, the looks of a flower don't always match the smell of the flower. And, you might like, uh, you might like roses, but you like the smell of jasmine better. You know, they're both flowers, but one has a visual appeal to you and means a lot of things, especially a rose in esoteric, Western esotericism, and jasmine, which has that same connotation in an, um, in a native Arabic, which I don't know the word for. It may even be jasmine. That might be a anglicized version of what they actually call that flower, right?
right,
So,
right.
but if you took all of those things, what is it, what do all my senses tell me about this thing? And then all the connotations that have been used in, history or that come to mind for you. And then the same thing for the Mandarin hua or flower. You know, all of those things. Um, there's a there's a place where both are describing it, but they're not capturing the essence of it. No matter how much you would write it out in detail, they wouldn't really get the essence of it. Even if somebody memorized all the literal translation that you could do on that, or an essay on that, whatever it is, write a book on that, there'd still be something that would be missing that would trigger something in somebody's mind and probably in their emotional state if they saw that thing in real life in its full bloom, or if they smelled it, or a combination, or touched the petals, all of those things, right? That are just so hard to, literally translate and to evoke a feeling, right? Those things, that space, you have to leave that space in between those two words, which will, even though they're from different languages, in the middle, there's the essential or one nature of what the words are trying to describe. So, and that can only come from your experience of those things, right? So, of the thing itself. And so in that place, um, you know, that's where that's where the energy moves. That's where the chi floats, is in that empty space in between where um, that it can't be described anymore. So the
Can you
essence
describe
of it.
like can you describe an experience that you've had while like and with a specific text and like how that went experientially, the what you're trying to describe
I
through
can
that
tell you with
text?
the same example of
Sure.
something that happened to me as an
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Um, in the uh, Liturgy of Hermes, where you go through and there's the part where you're imagining him and he's coming up out of the lotus and sort of resting on the lotus on the surface of the water, and he's you're you're going through the how he looks, what he's dressed as, all of those things, you know, and and again, there's one image of him when he's like that, with the stylus in hand and all of that, but there's actually a lotus flower coming out of the top of his head as well. And
Is
it's
that
like,
Egyptian or Greek
I
or
think it's Egyptian actually. It might be Greek. Who knows? I mean, there's lots of iterations of these things, right? So, but always birthed on this lotus flower, much like a lot of Asian deities, right? So it's really interesting. And so when I was doing the Liturgy of Hermes, and it was just at the time, it was was an experience. It was an I don't want to diminish it by calling it an oddity, but it wasn't something that, I mean, I wrote it down, but it wasn't something that at the time, because I was trying to do something else with it, it wasn't at the time. It was just something that it was an experience that happened, you know? And so when the lotus bloomed and Hermes was kind of rising up out of that,
in your imagination?
uh, Thoth was rising up out of that, right?
Yeah, in your mind or in your imagination.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That uh I heard, like as a chant or as a sound, um, the Chinese term for flower, hua, but like sustained, like a chant, like almost like something between that and a gong, right? And it gave me like wicked chills and, all of that, like there was a visceral sensation with that, right? So, um, I've never been able to repeat it as far as, it was a spontaneous happening. So, but if I hadn't, so me even trying to just do that part, or me trying to even go through the whole thing, it never really happened again. Right. So there was a moment in time where everything just sort of converged, and but I'll always remember that for me as the essence of hua, or flower, right? It's like, um, to, you know, to blossom or give birth to or something of that nature, you know, and to be at its prime, something like that, right? So, but it was in that moment, you know, that so far I haven't been able to repeat, um, even if that was the goal. And maybe it's because it wasn't the goal, and I gave it enough space because I was just like focused on the imagery and the quietness and the, you know, all of the things that go at that time, right? Um, uh, yeah, but that's the closest thing from a personal experience. I mean, I've had other things like that, but they're hard to come to mind. I'd have to look them up, but
Was that in the middle of the night?
oh yeah, that was a, you know, like a 2 a.m. or one of those deals.
And while you were in the middle of doing it for 42 days in a row,
Yep.
twice a day or once a day?
Twice a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you know, but that's sort of the idea of it. So even if I couldn't reproduce it, it gave me an internal understanding of doing something that would create enough space for that to spontaneously arise, something like that. The essence of it to spontaneously arise. So, um,
Two things come to mind when you say that. Like one is so I've been doing the elemental journey of to earth meditation from
yep,
your four elements
yep,
program that you do with
hmm,
learning strategies. And um based on our last conversation, I got a better sense of, at least an intellectual sense of, like doing any practice on a repeated basis to like deepen it, right? So I did that like five times since the last time we spoke.
yep,
And not every time, but each time seemed to get like a little bit deeper or like more
yep,
intense, right?
yep,
And and I had this, and like each time I've gotten like different responses from the like ambassadors that show up, or
yeah,
from
yeah, yeah,
the element earth element beings that are like in the courtyard in that journey.
yep,
um and uh and so I've been taking notes on them, and like I keep going with like the same question, right, or the same intent. And every time I get like a symbol or a word or an idea or whatever from the ambassadors or the king and the queen that's represented there,
yep,
or the
yep,
figures, I just like I write it down, like I've been making almost like a mind map of like the different things, and then just kind of looking at it here and there and like letting it settle in. And it hasn't really formed like a clear answer yet, but that's at least like how I'm approaching it, like layering in the ideas.
I
uh,
think that's a perfect path, you know.
yeah. And I'm just wondering too, like I have two questions about that. One, the short question is like, I know last time we spoke you said like just keep doing it until you don't get more juice out of it, and I'm wondering if I should just like keep going with that earth journey for like a month or something, or whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
or switch to go with the same question but go with a different element, or I don't know like how long to like extend the practice in one direction like that, like.
Well, you could either like pick a target time, although, you know, that's kind of not, I don't want to say forcing it, but you're
Yeah, like I don't want to
training
like.
it, you know.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to
I wouldn't do
super
that.
structure
I
it like that.
myself, I wouldn't do it that way.
Yeah.
Um,
But
you
like
know,
this last time I went, it was almost like there was no symbol, no answer. It nothing clear. It was just like I was like, okay, so maybe I'll just do it again then. Like
yeah, do it again and do one more time and see, you know, if you
yeah,
get butt kiss on that one, then it's sort of like time to move on, you know.
interesting. Okay.
Maybe your mind map would, you know, maybe your mind map being an sort of an elemental mind map, you know, it's starting out with Earth, but if you go through
The
and
others.
others, it might fill in other gaps, and then it might become this, you know,
Oh,
sort
like
of an elemental answer,
right. Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
Sure,
in a
sure.
weird way. Maybe even without you even consciously thinking about it, like where you're actually putting the spheres or whatever that are connected and how you're laying out the map. If it's just for you, like, oh, this looks like this is the place where I could write this in. Oh, this looks like the place where I could, without really having
Yeah,
any
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of, plan, to see like afterwards, huh, does that,
Yeah, yeah,
you,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like there's so many ways it can come through, but we know we're dealing with the subconscious. So it is going to be symbolic,
Right.
you
And I've
know?
gotten a little bit more comfortable with that. But also like I really feel a sense of appreciation for like the understanding that I've gotten from what you said about like, when you said, "Oh, you did the middle pillar at one point for like 8 or 9 months just like every day or something like or pretty close to that, but
Pretty
then
close. Yep.
doing like burning meditation once or twice a week in there to like burn off the things that were coming up or the dross that
Right.
was
Right.
bringing up from that. Like I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. To do that, to like keep freeing up the space as you keep going deeper with the practice or whatever. So
Yeah, because it also frees up space. I mean, it's so weird, right? Like, in a very strange way. I don't know I don't know of a better way to do this, just because of our personalities and our Western way of thinking and stuff as well. It's like it's in some ways it's almost an oxymoron, right? We do more stuff to create more space.
okay, yeah, sure.
you know
You mean like burning meditation specifically?
Everything,
Or
right? We do the elemental things to create space for something to give us an answer, or to illuminate us in some way, but it's the space where those things are talking to us, even our own subconscious, right? we you can't clear any more physical space than going to sleep.
right.
You're unconscious from your conscious mind, right? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know
And
it's
that
like,
that kind of brings up my question too, is like when you're doing like the that for instance that journey meditation, that earth element journey or any of them,
yep,
like when you like it sometimes I guess my question is like, okay, I know that the human mind has this like infinite capacity for imagination, right? So it's like, okay, I'm imagining the things that you're describing in the practice, but then
sure.
I guess it's like, okay, eh, how do I know that I'm not just like like I'm just making up whatever responses I'm getting or whatever
Yep.
things are coming to me or answers that I'm getting? And I guess I'm wondering if like, is it almost like the way that you describe lucid dreaming being like 99% of what's there is just a reflection of yourself or a different aspect of yourself? Um, but then you create a space where contact with other can happen, right? Or like,
It becomes a bridge, right?
right.
And
And that would be
so
the same for for your imagination, basically.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's like when I do those meditations, it's like I'll pick a, even though we say, oh, like here's the primary sense that goes with each element. Like, but it doesn't mean that there aren't the other senses in those elements, right? So it's not that pure, right? It's not like Earth is tactile and only tactile. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't be able to listen to even to the meditation, right? So,
Yeah.
so it's like, okay, so it's like, so when I go through those things, if I'm doing them multiple times, like the first time I'll focus on the primary thing, like the tactile sensation, right? So it's like, when I hear like, like where the river is, right? You hear these sort of rocks grinding together and, higher pitches, lower pitches, all of that stuff, but you can kind of sense, and I can actually, when I do it, I can see the rocks kind of churning around each other and that type of thing, and even like feel how they would be, Some would be harder like granite and smooth, and some would be more like sandstone and grinding, and everything in between, right? So it's like even though you're not jumping into the river and getting ground up, right? It's like I feel that when and I see it. Some of it's auditory, it comes through the auditory part, but then there is a visual part, and there is a tactile part. Like if I imagine it even now, I can feel myself either as one of those stones or as that happening around me, and the vibration of that grinding sort of
Mm,
impacting me in different areas. So
mm,
I'll sort of, you know,
mm,
think about that and get it. There was a long time ago, there was I can't even remember the name of it, but it was basically like a course on elemental meditations, that kind of thing. Not much with this, but more like nature meditations, that kind of thing. And I remember going out and like even, with the earth stuff, it's like, I mean, we've all gotten dirt in our mouths. We've all gotten, but I remember going to a place where there was a lot of big stones. It was like a short hike from here or something, and uh, and sort of climbing on the stones and, laying on the stones in different ways and just feeling them where they were comfortable, not comfortable, whatever. I remember even tasting the stone, like licking the stone to see what it tasted like, that kind of stuff. It's like all of those things sort of supply, because your subconscious records everything. So it supplies you with all of these things, right? And normally, like, you wouldn't be able to sort of retrieve those, but doing the meditation sort of gives a portal or a bridge to your subconscious where even small amounts of that might filter through even during the meditation, that you wouldn't register as anything other than this is just my imagination or this is just my whatever, until, it's not always the big surprise, right? I mean, it's like a lot of people, I think, are looking for that big surprise, and so they sort of um, manufacture that big surprise in their conscious mind, not their subconscious mind. They're doing it. It's like they don't understand the concept of being so um, focused on the aspects of the meditation that there are these gaps, and those gaps are the space where your subconscious can kind of slip through and add something to it. It's like if you're searching for the surprise, you'll never get the surprise. If you just are so totally focused um, on the thing that you're doing, the experience that you're having at that moment, and intensifying it, whatever, there's something in that opens some space somewhere else. You can tell this is really hard to articulate. I don't know how to do it any better than that. Now, I've had that same, and maybe when you have that experience, then you're able to translate that into other things, right? So I've had those experiences with qigong. I've had those experiences with the burning meditation. I've had those experiences with these elemental meditations. Um, um, I'm trying to think of other things that's been the case, like in very rare instances, the martial application, it can, yeah, I think it's this idea, definitely with seeing training, right? Like gazing and stuff. I mean, that's a prime one, right? So it's like, it's almost the reverse of that because your focus is on trying to have no focus. So it's a really kind of a weird whiplash effect, right? And then all of a sudden, it sort of comes to this singularity, and then everything goes, you know, everything's kind of blank, and it's just the energetic aspect that's there because that's the only thing that can come through. So, but it's the space in the focus, there's a space that opens up. And, I think I also sensed that when, I always want to call that guy Einstein, and I don't know why, but this is what happens to your brain on meditation or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Newberg.
when he was, yeah, I don't know why I want to call a guy Einstein. I have no idea. I've met two or three real life Dr. Einsteins, but not obviously not the guy. But
How enlightenment changes your brain.
yeah. And
Andrew
so there were
Andrew
points in
Newberg.
there where it was
Yeah.
like so focused, so focused, so focused, and then
Oh
all of a sudden
yeah.
everything dropped away, right? All
Right.
the brain stimulus just went like
Yeah.
back into the brain stem.
Right.
And that left, and then only this one area lit up, right? The hypothalamus or like deeper, not the limbic, but somewhere
Do you
in that
think that
territory.
that corresponds to like in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, he talks about like how when you get so deeply relaxed essentially and all of the senses turn inward. He talks about like basically all of the senses turn inward and become instruments of enlightenment or realization, like internally.
Yeah.
um do you think that, and because what you're describing with the Andrew Newberg thing is like he was basically saying um in his book that like most of those enlightenment states were preceded by intense periods of focus, so it was like you're very 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 focused almost to the point where like you can't be more focused, and then
Right.
everything like drops away and you go in much deeper internally or something like
Yeah. Yeah.
that. So
See, I
yeah.
think the same thing with being so far in delta that you bounce into gamma, which is kind of a lucidity thing.
Yeah, like a
Um,
lucid dreaming thing.
yeah, yeah. I mean, nobody's proven that out yet. Only from the standpoint of doing, fMRIs on like Tibetan monks, right? That they can walk around the market and talk with people and they're in gamma, like high gamma, like really high gamma, right? And yet they're still able to function and carry on and do whatever, but their brain is in that state. So, I mean, man, I I don't even know what that would be like, you know? Like I don't I I mean, I could probably I'm speculating at best at what the hell that would even be like,
Yeah.
to actually have a conversation with you or anybody else as if I was normal right now, the way we're having a conversation, but my brain was perceiving everything from that very high gamma state. That would be like, you know, that'd be the 21 grams of mushrooms, but you're coherent enough to have like you pass through the gates of hell and you've walked into Eden, you know?
Yeah. Well, that was what I was just gonna say. It's like when you're in the middle of a ceremony or whatever, and our mushroom ceremony, and you're just like, I'm totally normal Brian right now. Like, I don't know how, but
I don't know how, but it's pretty cool.
just practice.
So, yeah, so I think that that's the case, right? It's like I think that that's a key, but it's extremely difficult to convey that. I mean, look how hard it is for me to try to give you that information. And I'm really trying to articulate it as best I can.
Yeah.
And but to somebody who doesn't even have your experience, Jesus, it's like
Yeah.
that's like saying stare at a dot on the wall until you go crazy and then you'll break through into really cool stuff. You know? Oh, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Or it'll break your mind.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
one or the other. Go for broke.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like it's hard to
It brings up
articulate.
the other thing that I didn't think that was necessarily clear, but I almost felt like you were implying something like when you were talking about how the conversation the conversation on the live call followed a pattern. And you were saying like how, okay, well, the conversation was a pattern, or moving from one pattern into another. And I was thinking about, because I've been just contemplating that a little bit since you said it, like the idea of like looking at your life situation as a pattern and what's the pattern that you'd like to move into. um, and kind of comparing those two things, and how that's how you what you do in the clinic and when you're treating people with acupuncture and otherwise. um
See, because
but
I do think that like that stuff comes off as being very not just novel, but like it's that it's so simple or so complex that it would be very difficult to try to do it. How would you even start? Well, people are doing it now, with the work. They're trying to change their outside existence by doing, spiritual work, basically. And it's like, but if you look at all of these things as patterns, you're not trying to jump from one pattern to the next. You're just, you're making just a small, you're realizing what could shift the pattern you have now to a pattern that you would rather have by what would be the most efficient little thing that you could change on the existing pattern to make it more represent the pattern that you want. Not these broad, like, I want to ditch this whole thing, except maybe my personality, and then, and then move into this grand new vision, this grand new pattern. And it's like more like, what's the simplest thing that I could move to make that, like the difference between the um, the molecular structure of, or the chemical structure of serotonin, what one line could I draw, or what one molecule could I put in there, and all of a sudden it's DMT, or all of a sudden it's psilocybin, um, instead of saying, I'm just going to wipe out the whole thing and rebuild this brand new one. That's what everybody's trying to do. And, you know, and we have to go through it. It's a process. We have to do it. I did it. We all have to go through it, you know. And but then you learn, what's something that's more efficient, and the more, the more elegant, a lot of times the more efficient, and the more efficient, the more effective, right? So, and it's like, just what's the one thing that I could change to that would represent a movement toward my existing pattern looking more like the pattern that I want? What's that one thing? And if I do that and only focus on that one little movement, will that give me some, will that pattern give me some breathing room or some more space, and give me experience to be able to do that with the next part of the pattern I'm going to shift? Instead of trying to go from like, hey, there's nothing here, and then, oh, look, a rabbit, you know, out of thin air. It's like, no, that's, I mean, I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying it's really, really difficult, So,
especially when you're looking at like a whole life situation.
yeah, I mean, so what's the one thing, and what kind of changes will that bring? Um, yeah. So I think that that's the benefit of looking at things as patterns rather than, you know, a single thing. It's a pattern of moving parts, but the moving parts, I mean, the pattern itself represents something, your life, or your life situation, or whatever, or an aspect of that. And, and then I have this other one that I'd really much rather have. Well, what's something, how can I make that transition? Because if you do it that way, you do, and you transition into that place, it, again, from the outside world, it looks seamless. It doesn't look like, hey, Dustin's like this, and then all of a sudden Dustin's in a palace. How'd that happen? Oh, they're gonna have all kinds of bad thoughts about that. There's only a few of us that would be going like, good job, man, awesome, you know but dude, that was the best fuck up I've ever seen. So now you're gonna have to fend off all these dicks trying to rip it away from you forever. So, you know, um, it's that, right? It's like, by doing it sort of link by link, it looks like a very natural progression. Like nobody questions it, you know. Even if there are little pieces that are sort of come out of the blue, you know, it's like it looks like one little piece of luck. Wow, he was in the right place at the right time. Nobody questions that shit, you know. They may not feel good about it for you, other than me and Kira, Nina, your closest people, but your mom. But you know, the true outside world would just look at it and go like, ah, that fucking guy, right place at the right time. Can you imagine if I was like that? Or you know, that's what you got to contend with. So to make it so dramatic would just incur all kinds of like corrective measures from the collective to put you back to that place, the original place. If you do it by, because, you know, even though you're a small cog, you're still a cog. And that's, they, the collective needs to see that there's coherency in what is happening, right? So what's happening in their perception of the world and what they can see that they have consensus on. So something that's so anomalous would be almost forced by collective will to be pulled back to that space, Hence the, 95% of everybody that wins the lottery gets either in jail, worse situation, or broke, back to normal, So um, you can say it's stupidity on their part or, taking crazy risks but what's causing them to do that? What would cause somebody who's poor and has pretty good common sense, but trips into something really great and doesn't like go, okay, I'm going to be very cautious now with everything that I do. I'm going to use my common sense. I'm not going to go nuts. I'm not going to go. What causes 95% of those people to get sucked back in or even worse than they were? You know, that's that collective, you know, um, cement of the world that's causing them to be pulled back into place, be
Why do
put
you think
back. I
why do you
just
believe that?
I think that's just the way it is. It's not something that I.
Well, I just mean like is that something that like yeah, like what in your experience makes you think that that phenomena that you've just described is true?
Well, just observations that I've had myself about things like that. Situations that I've been in myself that are like that have followed those lines. And it just seems, it just seems like a more logical, when we look at the thing as a phenomena and not as a individual um, messing up or whatever, like bad choices. How can 95% of the people that are in that make horrible choices? To bring them to that place. That's not an anomaly. That's actually pretty damn close to a universal truth.
Is there anything that you would be willing to share that like that would be a representation of that principle?
Uh, I'd have to think about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd have to think about it.
Or have you ever like explored that topic in dreaming or something like that? Or
I mean, I have, but
like why do
um,
you think that? I guess is my question.
it's
Because you
just,
state it as
it's
though you
something that I've pondered for a very long time. Like, it didn't make rational sense to me that 95 to 98% of people could be That's stupid.
Here's the, I mean, because the only thing that comes up for me when you say that that I've heard elsewhere is in that Vadim Zealand book, Reality Transurfing,
Yep.
he talks about how um importance, and he puts importance into two different categories: inner importance and outer importance. Like outer importance being like, it's so important that this external thing happen or not happen, that I load this event with importance. I'm relying on it happening or not happening for my happiness or my continued existence or whatever, right?
Right.
And then inner importance being like how your self importance in relationship to others and to events and things like that. And he describes how like one of the goals is to like reduce importance to zero, whether it's like your inner importance or the importance that you ascribe to external events.
Right.
And um and the reason that he says that to do that is because when you load something with importance, then it's basically you're saying like it stands out in nature, right? And it induces balancing forces to come and make it neutral, right?
That's the Tao. The tallest tree in the forest is the first one chopped down.
Right.
That's a very Don Juan-esque, all the same thing, right? Remember how he really like slammed Castaneda on a regular basis through multiple books about self-importance, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And how, that idea of self-importance is like one of the major tripping stones for any kind of spiritual practice, right? Or
Yeah,
or
like
relief in the world, even relief in worldly matters, you know, because it's the place where it's like you're always in victimhood, in a weird way, right? Because it's like, oh, this person did that to me. That's why I lost that job. Oh, this is that's why I did this thing. It's like, how could they possibly let me go? I'm I'm so much better than those other candidates. It's like,
right, 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 right. Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
like has nothing to do with that.
Yeah, like even in one of my meditations for the earth element journey meditation practice, like I was in that phase of the meditation where you're coming back and you're seeing like the earth, and then you're coming and you're seeing like your house, and then you in your house, and you're going back into your body essentially. And
Hmm.
like for some reason, like in that phase of it, like again, I had this recognition of like the word entitlement came up, was like seeing myself, right? It's like that whole Taoist thing of like see the world and
Your
see
place in it.
your place
Yeah.
in it, and it's like I feel like practices like that are the practical application of that principle of like seeing the world and your place in it. Because like you could say that, but then what is the experience that you're inducing that will actually give you that perspective that they say is such a good thing to have, of
Right.
being able
Right.
to see a clear picture of the world and your place in it. And I feel like even that was like a little shimmer of that principle being like, you know, yeah, that like there's a difference between your feeling that you deserve something and you like actually being worthy of it in action, or acquiring it through correct actions or something like that, like
Or seeing having such a clear idea of your place in the world, and it's such a clear idea of the world itself that, again, in that clarity, some space opens up to you that you couldn't have seen otherwise. You see, you know, you see the spaces that you can slip through, or the spaces that you can, you know, do something else, or achieve something else, or change the situation in some way so that you can move into a slightly different position. I mean, we laugh at these kids, right? These young people that want to be YouTube stars, but they only see themselves driving McLarens, or Ferraris or something like that. And it's like, but they go from like living in their mom's basement to like driving McLarens. There's like, that's a fucking huge span to bridge, you know? There's nothing in between. There's no like life experience and, all the other things that are there. It's like you're ignoring all the things that are right in front of you, to make this massive leap. And those would be the people that if they end up in that massive leap, they're going to be the ones that have the farthest to fall, and pretty damn quickly too. Um, I mean, half of our movies are like that, right? It's like somebody achieves everything and then they just like go into obscurity practically because they fucked it all over, and you're constantly saying to yourself, why? From the outside, you're just looking at it. It's like that's one of those things that I never ask myself because I understand, that's like they they didn't they didn't do everything that was required to make that step by step progress into that place to know how to deal with all these situations up to that point. They were just dropped into that scenario. And then how could they not mess it up? They have
It's kind
no
of like
life experience to base it on.
I watched this Sadhguru video recently, and I've seen it a couple times. This clip where he talks about doing doing practices regularly, and getting to a place where there's like you regularly have some type of like internal peace or like stability or whatever, um, and then like after you keep going past that like plateau, um, like everything starts to like fall apart around you, like your job, or you have like challenges and whatever
Yep.
basically. He doesn't give
Everything.
any specifics, right?
Mm-hmm.
um and people like will ask him like, what the hell is going on? Like, why this was going so great, and like, like, what's the deal? And his response was like, "Oh, you idiot, it's working," And it's
Yeah.
like, but how is that working? Like, and he says like, "Oh, well, you if you once you get to a certain place with the practice or whatever, you get a software upgrade, and it's like, oh, okay, like it's like, but why does the software upgrade come with like uh induced like challenges, and not just like challenges, but like the deconstruction, it's seeming deconstruction, or like close to, or actual like overwhelming,
Annihilation of your old life.
yeah, overwhelming cha-
Adversity.
adversity. It's like, what the fuck? It's like,
I didn't sign up for that shit.
like, is that like, what is okay? So you're saying that I have developed myself, or I'm asking for the process that will help me develop into the person that is the end result that I'm looking for, or the evolution, to go further in my evolution, I need this adversity, right? Like in Don Juan, or in Castaneda, he talks about the worthy adversary or whatever, right?
Exactly.
It's like, is that what we're talking about? I mean,
I think so.
or is
Just
that like,
it's probably just a different way of
and
stating it, but it's the
and
same kind of thing.
the reason that I brought that up is because like you were talking about uh transitioning into a better place, or let's say
A different place.
a different place, right? Okay, so let's say that's financial, like, or you use the example of a kid getting a McLaren, or people winning the lottery or whatever. It's like, and then you're saying you think it's a very natural principle for people to acquire those things, and if they do it too quickly or spontaneously, to then drop back to um their where they were before,
Or worse.
or worse, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And you think that part of that, I'm just guessing, that part of that is like, okay, you are a certain way, and if I take you and I drop you into a more complex, or give you way more resources or power, but you're still you, like that, because you are still you without the experience that transitioned you into that place in a sustainable way, you don't know how to handle it, so you're just going to drop back, basically. Like, and these adversaries, or these this adversity, is what is like molding you into the person that can make that transition and then have it in a sustainable way. Or
Right. And even that, and especially if you see the new place as yet one more stepping stone, just a plateau to then continue to move forward from there, or to move on from there, right? You're utilizing it for that, right? So it's not like
you mean like if you're aiming like,
really high, you
yeah,
know, that just becomes, because look, it's not like, let's say all of a sudden you triple your income, which would just give you, some financial relief, right? In that, only in that territory, right? But it's not enough to, I mean, as far as I can see, it wouldn't be enough for you to start going like, woohoo, now I can spend what I want and I'm gonna go crazy and, like there might be a really tiny amount of that, but not like stupid, right?
yeah, yeah,
So, and the only reason it wouldn't be stupid is because you're still so close to the place where you started that you remember that and you can still taste that experience and you can say, hey, this is great. This is good, but I'm going to keep moving here. This just gives me a little bit of extra breathing room in this territory, but it's not enough to go like, whoo, I don't have to do anything anymore. Wah. But if you were to jump from where you are to like Elon territory or something maybe a little less than that, but in that zone, if you were making $1 million a year, it'd be very tempting to go like, woo, that temptation jumps because there's a hell of a lot more range of, things that you could fuck up with and still not really affect you, in a financial way, you know you do a bad investment and you lose 100 grand, but you're still going to make $1 million next year. It's a slap on the nose, but it's not going to kill you, right? So the amount of mistake that you feel that you could get away with, it's not an intellectual thing. It's very much a feeling thing. It's like those aspects of us that are still human will will still push at you. The watchers will still push at you, to say like, okay, you know, well, what about this? What about this indulgence? What about this indulgence? What about this indulgence? Um, can we mire you down, in the materialism and whatever, but just at this other level, but you're still kind of in the same place. You've just made a lateral move. you know, from an evolutionary standpoint, you know. So you're allowed to make bigger mistakes, right? It's sort of like if you don't have a credit card, you don't have a lot of territory to make mistakes, right? It's like hand to mouth every day, every month, whatever it is, right? You get the nut you have to crack and nothing more, right? And you know, if you somebody, I mean, this is how the whole country got into this credit card mess, right? It's like, dude, when I went to college, I had, I mean, I'd worked, but I mean, as a kid, right? When I went to college, when I opened a bank account, they gave me a credit card. I didn't have to apply. It came with the account, a checking account for Christ's sakes. They gave me a credit card. And so it's like, that's a real easy way because in your head, you're like, ooh, I'm important. And another part of my inexperienced youth was like, oh, I can spend on this and then I can pay it back. Well, with what? It's like, it's like, and people get mired in that stuff. And it's always like trying to catch up to that, which you never can, right? Because especially now, I mean, like Jesus Christ, it's like credit cards are like 30% interest or some shit like that. You're paying a third more for every egg that you buy with that goddamn thing. It's like if somebody said, you know, yay, for you, we're going to give you a special thing of charging you a third more for everything you buy. It's like, and we're going to compound that every month. So you can never dig yourself out of that. So, um, I think it's the same kind of concept. I don't think these things, I mean, they sound like nice analogies. I think they're the same pattern repeated in multiple territories at once. We're just not trained to look at it that way. I think it's actually a phenomena. I don't think that these are all just random things that actually occupy the same space, or something similar. I think it's the same forces that are doing it, are doing it, maybe for different reasons, but it's basically a pattern that's so entrenched. It would be very hard. It's very, very hard, as we know. It's very hard for us to dig ourselves out, to dig ourselves a path between all of those big slabs coming together and trying to smush bunches of people all at once, in different ways. You know, I mean, I'm not saying that it's a way to keep you down. I'm saying that life is very difficult. It's a very difficult, the most difficult game to play is evolution, right? Is in any way. So it's like you have to put it in a context that you can that makes sense to you and you can see. And once that happens and you've sort of seen that theory repeated over and over again in multiple scenarios, that you can go, oh, let me test that out in my own life. You know, what is this pattern that I'm in? And what would be a something easy that I could change, that I would change, and then transition that into a little bit of a step forward in my evolutionary path or my life situation. Does that work? Oh, it worked. Oh, shit. Okay. Well, what's another little step that I could change that scenario to transition my whole environment around me, you know, and you do it that way. But it's a tough game, right? It's not easy, you know. Even people that are born into really good circumstances, it's not an easy game to play, to succeed at, right? So, um, yeah. So I just think looking at it as patterns, it makes it a little bit more objective. It doesn't feel as close, and it doesn't feel as personal, which is a really big thing because, as soon as it feels too personal, you run a very high risk of being a victim, right? There are forces, or there are, people or events that are trying to F you up, you know, or that you just got caught in the middle of, or whatever it is. When it's objective, it's just like, wrong place, wrong time. Or, like, I didn't see that coming. Or, I wasn't paying close enough attention. Or I zigged when I should have zagged. Or, but it's all very neutral. It's not like something's trying to crush me everywhere I go. Very easy to slide back into that, right? Very easy to have a scapegoat of some outside of yourself, right? So I think, from the Taoist perspective, they were very eloquent in the way that they stated that. It's very, like a lot of meanings in a very something that sounds so trite almost, superficial. It's like see a clear picture of the world and see your place in that world. Most people hear that and they go, "Oh, yeah, that makes sense." But they don't really, it takes a long time to get the inner meaning of that, What does that entail? You know, It- it's pretty profound when you really sort of, you know, look at it and see, and sort of experience that and look at it, maybe sometimes even to give it more objectivity, to look at it outside of yourself, look at somebody else's patterns and see how they've either effed it up, or they've done well with it, right? And and then you sort of turn that mirror on yourself and go, well, what are my patterns? What do I, what am I, what's my, what's my picture of the world? And, and can I find the spaces within that picture that I can maneuver? Can I move in, right? If I don't like where I am, if I want to progress, if I want to do more, so or have more or whatever, right? If I want to have a different experience, how would I move out of that confining space, into something that's a little more freeing? Maybe that's a better way to look at it.
Well, I think everybody's trying to do that to one degree or another.
So not everybody. I mean,
Not,
some people are just really very comfortable where they are. They don't really, they're just waiting to die, basically. You know, they're very okay with where they are. They've got the middle thing hammered down. They're not really suffering. Could they have more? Sure, that'd be great, but they're not uncomfortable where they are, and they'll just sort of try to maintain that. And, they're not trying to evolve. They're not trying to go forward or be more. Some people are very content where they are. So,
hmm, hmm. Yeah. So that's kind of an interesting thing, though. I mean, if you're content where you are, it's kind of like, because you always mention things like the watchers or whatever, right? And that's specifically in relationship to some kind of like evolutionary process or striving for more.
striving for, yeah.
Yeah, it's I was watching another Sadhguru video the other day, and he was saying like he was like he was describing uh you know children that have disabilities or something like that, and
Yep.
somebody was asking him a question about that, um and he was in his response he was saying like, oh, this all sounds very brutal what I'm saying and the way that I'm saying it, but he's like, but I didn't do it. I'm not like, I'm just describing it clearly and accurately, but
Right.
the reality is that you have a very brutal creator. You know? I was like,
Or a very neutral creator that its main thing is diversity, right? Its main thing is like everything all at once all the time, and let's see what happens with this mishmash. Children born crippled, people getting stuff they don't deserve. It's like, this is the best show ever. And oh man, I have an infinite number of those shows going on everywhere. And I'm watching them all at the same time, binging for billions of years. And I can eat what I want and I never gain an ounce. And
See, you have such a like humorous kind of light-hearted attitude towards like all this stuff in a way that's like, it's so like, yeah, I'm like, man, were you always like that? Like,
I don't know. Maybe I think it just comes from, you know, delving into this so often for so long a period of time that these these things, and I'm willing to think that it may be just a coping mechanism too. It's like to some, not that I'm unhappy or anything like that, or that I'm like resolved to my fate. Obviously I'm not, so, because I keep pushing the envelope. So, um, but it's a way that I can, I haven't been stopped by it, and I haven't been paralyzed by that notion, or any of these things that I've just talked to you about. It doesn't make me depressed. It doesn't make me elated or feel
Well,
like
maybe
I've
that's
got the
because
secret and nobody else knows
well,
or
maybe
any of
that's
that
because
bullshit.
like you don't feel stuck.
I don't feel stuck. No, at all. You know, I mean, I'm trying to work my way through it, I'm trying to, it's, over the years, I, I, I'm trying to work with what I have, and, and, um, and the only way you can truly do that is to put it to the test, right? And do it and uh, see how it works out, right? And then, um, and
Was there
progress or curl up and lick your wounds and try again or give up, and be
do
content where you are and that's
were
it.
there times where you did feel stuck?
Um, more like stuck is a tough word, right? It's like blocked. I never felt blocked. I don't think I felt stuck. I mean, I've felt like where I was up against, the at least in the way that, okay, there have been times when I thought what I was, like I had insurmountable pressure against me. And but and then but that's too easy. For in my head I was like that's too easy because that means no matter what you do, you can't move. And I remember being in that situation once, a really, really long time ago. And and that was um, my first real experience with surrender, where you just like you give up, you're surrendering, you're just like, okay, do what you will. It's like it's nothing I can do. I can't move a millimeter. I can't do anything. I'm crushed here. So, if I just accept this and relax, and that's when everything's shifted. And so that was my first true experience of um, relaxation is power. Relax to the point of surrendering everything was the thing that moved me through that insurmountable oppression, you know. So,
Yeah, like I've been thinking about like one of the things that I was asking a question of my dreams and I woke up not with a totally clear memory of the dream itself, but just this like um in my mind it was like a triangle and it was like time, energy, and attention. It was like this is all I have. Like I only have time, energy, and attention. Like, that's it. I have when I do something, time, I have how I do something, energy, and I have what I do, attention, right? It's like that's it. That's all I have. And I have
yep,
like a limited amount of those things.
yep.
And so like I think there's almost a sense of or some approximation of surrender in that, in the sense that like it's like there's only so much that you can do. So, you
So,
know,
what's the best use of that?
right. I mean,
Right,
that's all there really is.
right,
But I think
right.
what you're talking about is maybe a little bit more than that, or kind of goes
Well,
beyond that a little bit. Because when you say relaxation is power, relaxation to me is a conscious process. Like you mean it as a conscious process, not just like laying down and taking a nap.
right, 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 right. Yeah, it is a conscious process because you know, you could push against an immovable object forever until you literally your heart bursts or your muscles give out or you pass out from fatigue or whatever, right? It's like there's 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 that, but it's like do you do it to the point where can't, again, very hard to articulate. Can you do that to the point where you've exhausted every option except for just, you know, um, relaxing into the situation? Like, like, oh, there's there's no way I'm gonna lift this. So, or move it or whatever it is, right? So, you know, you could continue to try to go against it, or you could just lean into it and say, hey, this makes the best backrest I've ever had. You know, it's like I'm just gonna lay down here and take a sleep, or I'm just gonna, relax. And if it's still there when I get up, it's still there when I get up. Maybe I'll walk in the other direction or whatever, it's basically, but there's a conscious, without feeling, without crying or screaming or raging against the immovable thing or whatever. There's none of that. It's it's impersonal. It's not malicious or benevolent or anything else, right? It's literally just this neutral thing. And so the only way that you can ever achieve anything for yourself is just to relax, right? Consciously surrender that that is an immovable object. So the only thing it can't really take away from you is your true inner self, right? And you relax into that, you know. If it kills you, it kills you. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But it's like, but there's nothing, but it can't strip that away from you. You have to give that away. All right. So, and it's a difficult place to come to prior to that experience, right? It's a very difficult thing to, I mean, that's a very high level of, I think, would take, you know, somebody like a, and I'm not even saying that they haven't gone through that, some type of enlightened being to really to do that prior to trying their hardest to get through that immovable thing or to move the immovable thing, right? It's like, to just look at it and understand that that's what it is and go, hmm, okay, turn around and walk the other direction, you know, without going, I, no, I will do this. And it's like, okay. That was me. I was like bound and determined to like fight to my last breath, and it was only in that ultimate realization that there was nothing I could fucking do to change anything that was happening. Nothing. I tried everything. There was nothing, no movement, nothing. And it was like the only thing I could do was, consciously. you know. And as soon as I did, it turned around, so um and that was my first experience of that, really. So, I mean, thankfully I had it when I was very young. And, like I think good and bad about that. Because it was a fucking horrific experience, but it was also, profound in that, I always use that as my sort of litmus test for all these things. You know, do you give up too soon? No, you push to the very edge of what you can, right? But you also have some experience, and remembering that experience, you're you may not even have to go to exhaustion before you realize what you need to do is relax, and, retreat where nothing can get to you internally, where nobody can assail that castle, right? Unless you let them in, so, um, it's just you. And do you want to go out, like raging against the one, or do you want to, you know, do you want to relax into that embrace and be okay with it? You know, it's I
Say that again, or do you want to what?
relax into the embrace and kind of meld with it or go with it. You know, it's I don't I'm waxing on poetically, probably not very well, but I don't know how to articulate it any more than that.
Yeah, yeah. I
I'm
mean,
I'm trying to articulate my feelings at the time, and that's one of those experiences that it's like it happened yesterday. It's like it happened an hour ago. There is no erasing that in my memory. There is no dulling of that experience. It's in technicolor stamped into my brain. There's no way that I'll ever forget that. It's too anytime I evoke that memory, it's right there as if it would just happened without the aftermath of like me trying to recover for weeks afterwards.
yeah, 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 yeah.
But the experience itself is very visceral and, I can bring it up at any given moment. And so, um, it's a different thing, right? I'm sure that's the same kind of on that side of, having some kind of, um, ecstatic experience, like the samadhi or something like that, where it's just so overwhelming that it's it's branded into your mind. You can't you'll never get out of it, you know, or you'll never forget it. It'll never even lose its edge. It's just everything is so crystal clear that it's there.
And do you think that like, speaking again from like an evolutionary standpoint, or something that's like a extreme expression of adversity, like, do you feel like that like prepared you for being in the life situation that you're in now in some capacity?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. It definitely definitely put me on this path. That's for sure. Absolutely, for sure. No. So, then everything else that came, after that was all sort of slanted in that direction, right? Everything I did, everything that I liked doing, the things that I liked doing, all of that was tinted with that experience. So, how do I, how do I get back to that or something similar on a regular basis, but without the trauma, attached to it initially?
Mhm.
Is it even possible? You know,
Yeah,
you know.
I should say I was thinking that this conversation would make a pretty good podcast. And now I'm like, because not that I'm thinking any different about it. I think it was a good conversation. I know that if someone was listening to this, they'd be like, well, Dustin, why aren't you asking Brian to tell you more about that experience? And I'm just being polite because like I know what it is and I don't know if you want to share it. So
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't one of my finer moments, let's put it that way. But um
do you want to tell me about it and then
yeah,
listen to it back and decide whether, no, okay, that's fine.
I don't know. But if, I mean, if you get 1,000 requests for me to tell the story again, then
I know
I'll
I'm gonna get a
then I'll
handful.
do it. I'll do it. Not even reluctantly, I'll just do it because, I feel like so many people use those experiences if they've had them or whatever to, you know, um,
As a badge of honor.
kind of, and I don't, I don't feel, I feel first of all, fortunate that I survived it intact, more or less, let's say, and that, um, you know, I didn't like escape to a monastery or anything because of it, or out of fear, you
Are you
know.
thinking that people will change the way that they think about you because of it? Or are you
Oh no,
thinking
no,
that
I don't give a
people
shit about
will,
that. It's more that, like, again, most people will use that as sort of like a, hey, remember the time when that makes me super special. And it's like, I don't really feel that way. It's like it was a very, it's a very personal experience, even though I count it as like one of my dumber moments for sure. Um, but that and who knows, accidental, I don't really believe in coincidence. So you know and I don't want to imply that something was pushing me to do that either. It was just like, it was a convergence of all of these factors, and then um you know me kind of overestimating my ability to maneuver in that territory, and got stuck, and um that's not the time you want to learn that you've overestimated your abilities. I, oh, so anyway, um, yeah, so I think a lot of people just use it as like a, look at me, I'm so cool, I survived that. And I look at myself and go like, man, you were fucking stupid. Thank God it turned out okay. Oh man. But yeah, so yeah, it was ridiculous.
okay. Well, I'll let you know how many requests we get for
Yeah, there you go.
that.
There you go. That sounds like a plan.
It'll be more than one.
Yeah. It's got to be a bunch though,
Okay.
because I don't want to. I'm not gonna repeat that one for just a bunch of voyeur audience,
Yeah.
of bad experiences. So yeah, but yeah, it it definitely. I mean, I was already on this course, but that definitely set me in the on the on the more extreme road, let's say.
Yeah, like um yeah. Yeah, I feel like the your level of engagement in that, I mean, that was one of the other things that came out of my repeated practice of the elemental journey meditation was like as it was um like I think I probably tend to have like a very like I'll do the practice and then be like, oh, that wasn't so great or something like that, like, or it wasn't that vivid or impactful or whatever, right?
Yep.
um or how do I know I'm just not just making it up in my head or whatever, right?
Sure.
And but as I've gone deeper with it, I feel it's like it reminds me a bit of plant medicine experiences, but
Mm-hmm.
just not as intense, right? So it's
Right.
almost like when you're journeying to this like other elemental planet or whatever that's all this one element, and
Right.
you're immersing yourself in like the sensory aspects of it and what you're seeing there and all that. It's kind of like I feel each aspect of the meditation like impacting me, but on an emotional level and on an energetic level, but it's like little drops instead of like one big tidal
Flood.
wave of
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
sensory, but it's from the like the internal sensory array of the experience like washing over me and through me and like kind of giving me whatever subtle impressions I'm getting from that or information that I'm getting from that. And I definitely feel like there's more benefit in doing something like that over and over again and not just like one time. And I guess I'm saying all that to say I it's giving me a better sense of like what makes you passionate about doing the work and doing the practices over and over again, not just because you're trying to get somewhere, but because you also enjoy like immersing yourself in them. And I think like, yeah, for me, like negating the experience because it was like not intense enough or not powerful enough, or thinking anything along those lines is just kind of like uh putting some kind of limiter on the benefit that I can get from it, instead of just like appreciating each thing for what it is, coming back and doing it again, appreciating what I get, coming back and doing it again, and and
Yeah.
following that cycle. So that's been
And
like
also
really helpful.
understanding that it's not a linear progression too, right? Momentum goes sort of in an exponential sort of arc,
Mm,
and we never know, when we're going to
right.
take one of these little side harmonics,
Yeah.
from the main thing, and it opens up into this whole new array, and you're like, what the hell? And it's even hard to remember how you got there, but I can guarantee you how you got there was by focusing on what you were doing right then and there and
Right.
having that experience. And those little harmonics come out of nowhere and go like, hey, here's a side journey. Why don't you take it? And they don't even wait for you. They just suck you into it. It's like, what the fuck? How'd I get here? Right. And it's like, and it opens up for you, and you're like, you come back and you're shaken because it's like so extreme, right? And the hardest part for me was, and one of the things that has driven my own practice is trying to really focus on those foundational things and the small things, and being so focused on what I'm doing at the time that there's more chance of those things opening up. So not only do my individual experiences become more consistently good, but the opportunity for those other things to, open up spontaneously rises, right? And so, but it's not like, um, I have more of those spontaneous things happen now than, me trying to push myself to achieve that same thing as a goal. And it's almost like, again, you know, I've given it space to open up on its own, right? And so, and if, um, God, it's so difficult to talk about. I'm very frustrated with that. I mean, it really is. I feel like, when you,
Mm.
like if you're doing plant medicine or something and you're really out there and something becomes so clear to you, but then you try to explain it to somebody and you can't, and you're trying all these verbal manipulations to try to get them, and they're just kind of looking at you like, dude, you're so fucking high right now. Just stop, because you're gonna make me laugh, and I don't want to laugh. I want to get back into my zone. It's like you ain't making no sense. So just
Yeah.
know you're not making any sense. Okay. I
Yeah.
know you've had this experience, and that's awesome. You can try to explain it to me later, but don't try to explain it in this state, because you won't find the right words, and it will just be frustrating to you. And so, and I feel like that now, trying to even just explain the parameters of these things. It's like, what the fuck is the spaces between the spaces? What the hell is he talking about? It's like, it's so difficult to, articulate clearly so that somebody could kind of get just even an inkling of what I'm talking about. That's all you're going to get from this,
Yeah.
I think, unless, you can sort of match it to your own experiences and patterns and say, oh, maybe it's this. And then you actually try it out, right? And experiment with it, experience it, and try to see if that will open up for you, or open up a different avenue for you, or a different experience for you. It's only in that you can really kind of get the essence of it, or maybe experience the essence of that, right? And if you're persistent with it, right? But it's very difficult. It's very difficult. I mean, I wish I could literally give you a bullet point on paper, with landmarks and signposts that say like, and here's where this shit happens. and then you take 3 steps to the left, turn around, pirouette in your mind, land on your little pinky on the right hand side, and boom, you're in, right? It's like, I wish I could do that because that would
It's
just
kind
be
of
so
honestly,
awesome.
it's kind of like reminding me of your Superman dream. You're like, see, look, here's like a group of people, and you're like
That's
trying to
right.
show, look, you can go through this glass wall here and get to the other side, and then you just go like this, and you can, and then you get through the first one, and then there's another wall, and you're like, oh, like I'll get through this wall, but never through the second one. So then you just smash the second one and like fly away. It's like it kind
I
of
can get
sounds,
them through the first wall, but they're never going to get through the second wall.
yeah,
Oh, well.
yeah,
I tried.
yeah,
Looks like I better save myself.
yeah. Hey, I appreciate you trying.
Oh God, I don't know how much help it is or just more confusion, yeah, it is. I'm always so impressed when people, you know, like I don't know, people that like Peterson that can take these complex ideas and you know, and articulate them so well that
Right.
people
Well,
really
I
are
think that
are put into the
y-
mood of it, you
yeah,
know.
but I think like one thing I would just say is that like I think like 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 any of us, I think you probably put more emphasis on the times like this where you feel like your ability to articulate something is lacking, but like there's a lot more times where you do articulate things and it's like freaking kick ass, and it like and there's plenty more of that, and I think a part of it is almost like a lot of the times when it's really working is it does almost feel a bit like a journey, similar to what Peterson does, where it's like you're going on like a you're like kind of everyone's kind of handing over their brain to you and being like, okay, take me on this ride, and then you're just kind of taking them on like a mental journey of like ideas or images or associations or whatever that kind of like all become through the picture that you paint along the journey one very impactful impression, of like a greater picture. And I do think that happens quite frequently. So, um, you know,
Um,
we'll
you
figure it
know,
out.
and yeah, I might just have I'm harder on myself than anybody else, that's for
Yeah,
sure. You
yeah.
know, I have such high standards for myself and I rarely meet them. Let's put it that way. I wish I was better.
Dude, what the fuck? Why we're like in this like club together of people that do that? Like,
I know. I
we should
know.
just like rename our group that,
Yeah. Yeah. The new group will be called I Wish I Was Better.
Yeah, yeah.
Screw it, to be silent. I'm going to rename it I Wish I Was Better.
Don't worry, you're among friends. We all do. It's sad, really. But when we get together, we feel better.
That's right. That's right. It's all in comparison.
Yeah.
Well, that's a problem for future Brian.
Yeah.